You're tuned in to today's Live at 5. Before we jump into today's episode, I just want to remind you that this show is only possible because of the continued support of amazing people like you. You can continue to support us by subscribing to this YouTube channel, sharing an episode with a friend, or signing up to our Patreon page via the link in the description below. From there, you'll be able to access some exclusive bonus content and dive deeper into the world of Live at 5. Now, without any further ado, let's get right into today's show. We hope you enjoy. Hey there, and welcome to Live at 5 on this Tuesday, the 12th of May. It's been an eventful day so far because Darcy and I have spent hours furiously clicking around trying to figure out some new software. You okay, Darce?
I'm okay, man. Yeah, I'm gonna make it. I feel like we've done that enough that I could click a marathon.
Well, it's so funny, isn't it? Because for somebody, I mean, you with film making and stuff, you use a computer more than I do. But before this whole thing went down, I didn't ever use my computer because my whole job is playing music with other people. So it's but it's a fun world. I mean, yesterday was kind of a buzz again. To do that.
It was awesome.
We had Ferg Ireland on the show. And he was playing from his house in Broccoli, and I was playing from my house in Deptford. So that was a lot of fun. And it all synced up and miraculously worked. So we're going to try to bring you more shows like that as we move on. I want to just shout out to a few of our Patreon subscribers. If you don't know what Patreon is, basically it's a way to kind of get more involved with the Live at 5 program. And we give you some bonus content, and there's like a kind of it's kind of a basic subscription structure, and it really helps us out, people who join up to that. So thanks to Ed, thanks to Alex McMillan, and thanks to Richard K. And thanks to everyone else who's subscribed and followed this show. It means a lot to us. So moving right into today's show, our guest today is somebody that I met probably 10 years ago, right when I moved to London. I mean, he was one of the first people that I really wanted to play with because, his whole approach is super inspiring, and we're into, the same kinds of music, Metallica, kind of experimental punk. No, none of that.
That's my
we're into Django Reinhardt and Louis Armstrong and all that good stuff. And since then, Mark, who's highly accomplished bass player, he's moved to New York City, and he's going to be joining us from there. And he did a degree at the Julliard School, and he's since played with heroes of mine. Amongst those names are Johnny O'Neill and Wynton Marsalis. So before we meet up with Mark in the digital forum, we're gonna listen to some music from him. This is Line for Lions by Jerry Mulligan, and you're listening to Live at 5. Hey there, and welcome back to Live at 5. And we're joined by Mark himself, Mark Lewandowski from Upper Manhattan. How you doing, Mark?
I'm good, Jaguar. How you doing, man? Nice to speak to you.
Man, it's great to see you on this, and I can't thank you enough for for doing it. It's cool to hear
pleasure,
from you.
Man. My pleasure. It's nice to have something to get me up in these crazy times.
Good.
Talk to you.
Yeah. Well, I just wanted to, kind of start out by just talking about a few things that I've noticed that you've said to me over the years. And I think that, one of the things that, drew me drew us together in those early days in London was that kind of interest in the, both the kind of Django style of playing and the kind of, the trad stuff, because you always had a huge amount of knowledge on that. Where did that come from?
Well, I mean, to be honest, I kind of have thought of those schools of music as pretty neglected repertoire streams, really. I mean, a lot of my work has been heavily influenced by kind of a love of those earlier styles, really, even if I don't play them kind of de facto, really. Because I mean, just in the same way that you guys are doing, I don't really like to kind of recreate any of that stuff, because that's music that's kind of 100+ years old right now. But there are some kind of lessons from some of those early artists, which I think the modern improviser can really bring upon themselves to incorporate in their approach.
Yeah.
So I mean, like, for example, Django's music, firstly and foremost, it was a really kind of social way to get into the whole concept of music making. Like back when I was a kid in Nottingham, like there was an instrument makers college about 10 miles outside of the city center, really. And there were countless French and Italian and Spanish luthier students, basically. And a lot of them would make guitars. There was probably the best guitar making course in the country. That's kind of the same sort of time I got a double bass. And then a few of my friends kind of got into this music through combinations of knowing those people at this instrument making course.
Yeah.
So basically, I mean, that music kind of has all the elements I like about good music, and it's got a good groove, it's got a good feel, it's got a good time, and especially it's melodically driven. I find all of these earlier musics are kind of so strongly melody driven that's reason enough for me to kind of get deep into it.
Really. Right. So, on a more specific level, like you have a way of, I think of, the double bass is obviously the kind of lowest instrument, the lowest range that we get in a jazz band, in a kind of any jazz setting, just in terms of the kind of spread of sounds. But the way you play and the way I love to play with people is that you really also use the bass to drive the beat. You kind of occupy that role. And I think of, Django's music as a great source of that kind of thing. And one of the words that you've used to talk to me about, when you've been excited about certain, I'm thinking, when we talk about Pete Horsfall, you always say, that guy's got such great articulation. Sweet Pete. And I think, when you play bass, you really think about the attack of the note. And
sure.
Do you play like that in all settings? Did you have to think about that a lot, or was that just kind of the natural way that you played bass?
I think I've actually really thought about it long and hard. Again, because a lot of that is owing to these early kind of innovators. Everyone had such a rhythmic approach to every single part of their whole musicality, really. And that doesn't mean it all has to be kind of punchy and percussive. I mean, Lester Young has an equally rhythmic approach that's a lot more fluid, and he's probably up there with, well, definitely up there with the top 5 musicians in that I think ever lived. Yeah. I think with that music, I mean, obviously the bass, like Milton Hinton used to say bass means bass. He used to say like BASS means BASE. And that's really true, because we are the lowest member of a group, and we have a very, very important role harmonically. But I argue kind of that our primary role is a rhythm instrument, really, as in the groove setting. obviously what you just heard of me playing some solo bass is kind of a little devoid of that, but in ensemble context, that's definitely the case. I mean, all
Yeah.
these people, look at the way Louis Armstrong like enunciates what he's got to say.
I
He
mean,
punctuates everything, and I mean, I'm
yeah,
trying to kind of bring that approach into the bass, which I kind of find is a very lyrical, very smooth instrument naturally. Try and be able to kind of alter some of those note lengths to make it kind of jump. Those guys all had so much articulation and kind of syncopation within the notes. Like, and
yeah,
that, I guess that's coming from African stuff, the kind of 3/4 stuff. I mean,
right.
like, I mean, it's all pairings really. I mean, that was a
Sure.
pretty pathetic way of singing it, but you know what I'm saying? It's that kind of inner rhythm and groove is coming from everything to do
I
with that old music.
couldn't agree more. Couldn't agree more. And you had you know, since when did you move to New York?
About I'm guessing
Is
it's
it
just
3 or 4
come to 3
years?
years ago. 3 years ago now.
3 years. 3 years.
I spent the
So
first 2 of those years at Julliard doing stuff there.
doing the artist diploma program, right?
That's right. Yeah, that's right.
So I think one of the coolest things for me about you going to New York was that, you know, you were able to spend, and you have been able to spend time with some really inspiring personalities, and amongst those are obviously you know, Johnny O'Neill, Ben Wolf, but also you know, your friend who I'm sorry passed away recently is Henry Grimes, right?
Sure, sure. Oh
Amazing
man,
bass
we
player.
can go back to Django on this. I mean,
Well, that's what I was going to
remember
ask you. Yeah, tell me
man,
that story. Yeah.
I used to ask Henry all these kind of questions, and I mean,
If people, by the way, if people don't know who Henry Grimes was, he played with everybody. He was one of these, you know, fixtures. I mean, Mark, you can explain it better if you want to, but he was a fixture on the New York scene, and he played with people who played swing music. He played with people who played bebop. He played with Sonny Rollins, and then he played with, you know, lots of free and avant-garde groups. And it was one of those kind of holistic pictures of how the music could go. So to fall in with a guy like that, especially for you being such a kind of an eclectic musical personality, must have been amazing, right?
Sure. I mean, he played with like Benny Goodman, and then like within 10 years played with Albert Ayler. I mean, it's pretty much like,
Wow.
I mean, it's kind of, it's a whole galaxy of music within that man. I mean,
Yeah.
like, he always gave me that. I mean, he was a very cosmic guy without saying that. I mean, I mean, Henry really tapped into like all the core values of music, and I mean, it was a beautiful experience to spend some time with him.
Yeah.
And to really get deep. I mean, I was attracted to him as a mentor because, as you said, he's just so broad. But I
Yeah.
asked him who his favorite bass players were, and he said Django Reinhardt's bass players. He didn't specify names,
Sure.
but he kind of gave that foundation, that solid, funky kind of foundation without drums. Strangely enough,
Sure.
he gave
Right.
that as his kind of bucket list bass, really. Which I
Wow.
mean, I can kind of relate to too. Which I never expected to hear that when I asked him. But
Yeah,
I
that's
mean,
kind of not what
yeah.
you'd expect, you know, that he'd probably say like Jimmy Blanton or somebody like that, you know.
I mean, Django's bass players were great. I mean, like Coleridge Good, the great Jamaican bass player who lived in England for a very, 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 very long time, and he died not long ago, I think, in his after his 100th birthday.
Wow.
I mean, he played with Django. He played the famous French national anthem and the minor swing that everyone seems to put on any kind of French cafe scene in a movie. And like
Wow.
Coleridge, I mean, he played with some great bass players.
That's
yeah,
amazing.
Michelot.
Yeah. So, you know, the thing that I love that you're doing with, you know, your kind of interest in the older styles is that and this is another unique thing about you, is that you're a band leader as well. So,
Sure.
I think it must have been probably about 4 years ago you did the Fats Waller project that where you kind of and you know, everybody loves Fats Waller. We did we played an archive concert of, you know, if people watch the archive at 5, we played Shane Forbes playing Fats Waller tunes with
Yeah.
you know, it's just such great music. And Darcy and I were talking about this, that you could listen to you can listen to 2 hours of Fats without even knowing that the time went by, because it has so many things, has so many values in it. It's not heavy-handed in any way, but it's got, you know, it has rhythmic virtuosity, pianistic virtuosity. It has humor. It has melody. It has all this great stuff.
Sure.
But you kind of really made that music your own. So tell us a little bit about that project.
Man, I mean, like all these things we've spoken about, the impetus of me doing that. I mean, I write my own music, and by no way do I want people to kind of think that that is my back. The older styles is certainly a huge influence, but I'm trying to do something that's relative to who I am, where I'm from, and also more importantly, like kind of where we are musically today with all this influence. And as I said, kind of a little earlier on, I think a lot of the canons of these earlier musicians are a largely forgotten area of the music. I know I was as guilty as a lot of people for kind of thinking jazz was born in 1940 with on 62nd Street. But I mean, there's like half a century's worth of stuff before that, and that's fascinating. I mean, Fats, people see him as a great bon vivant and entertainer, and he was. I mean, you can't help but smile listening to his songs, and he's universal. People know Fats Waller everywhere. He Misbehaving, Honeysuckle Road. But the thing about him is he's an artist and he's a craftsman. Because I kind of got this theory that he was the original hit pop song writer. And
Right.
materials, like, I mean, like they're catchy. I mean, that's why they stick in people's vernacular memory, really.
Yeah.
I mean, the musicians I used on that project, Liam Noble and Paul Clavis, are two musicians who I think share this approach of a real kind of reverence for that early thing. But I wouldn't, in the same way as I hope people don't class me, I mean, I wouldn't ever class them as kind of like musicians who are trying to just recreate stuff. I mean, they're trying to deal with all of these factors and mix and match them all together.
Yeah, well,
Liam,
I mean,
it's amazing.
All you have to do is put the record on, and you realize that it's it's a fresh take on that material. And I love that you guys have retained the kind of the energy of Fats, but without kind of just playing the tunes as those arrangements with. It's not cliche at all. So it's
sure. I mean, my focus is the repertoire and the actual material. Because I mean, how can I ever match all the other things that make up Fats Waller? Fats Waller's Fats Waller. I mean, no one who's ever touched his music, which is actually surprisingly few people, like historically. I mean, Jason Moran obviously addressed his music in a totally different way than we did, but that's coming from Jason's. And I think Carmen McRae did a record in the 80s and 90s of his music. But
don't forget Louis did one.
True, man. I mean,
and just made it Louis,
Of course. I mean, but that's in my own small respectful way, that's what we're trying to do. And I really hope to carry on with that project. I got this whole scheme going on, especially in these times when I can't kind of get out there to explore some more of those kind of Harlem stride pianists.
Well, tell us about this the most recent one.
Well, I mean, next in line, I believe, is going to be kind of an examination of the music of James P. Johnson. I mean, all this is cool now, living in New York.
Tasty.
Because, I mean, my old apartment, like 10 minutes walk, I could walk past the church where Fats Waller played organ when his dad was a preacher. Right. And I can walk past where James P. Johnson went to school. I mean, well, actually, no, I can't, because that was in New Brunswick, New Jersey. So you got to know your facts. But no, James P. is going to be actually. I recently spent some time at the Institute of Jazz Studies at Rutgers University in Newark, not far away from where James P. was born and raised. To back up, I class there to be like the big four, I think, major exponents of that early Harlem piano sound: Fats Waller, James P. Johnson, Willie Lyon Smith, and Mary Lee Williams.
Ah, interesting. So Tatum, you don't put Tatum in there?
I do, but he's an entity unto himself.
Yeah, he's such a different. It's another. Yeah, I hear you.
Totally.
So, continue.
I mean, with this. Sorry to keep rambling on. I guess.
No, love it.
About, I'm enthusiastic about this. I mean, going back to James P. I mean, he's such a forgotten force. I mean, I just spent this time at Rutgers, the Institute of Jazz Studies, where they have an archive of all of his handwritten manuscripts and photographs of him, like with his family, like. A signed picture of W.C. Handy, all this incredible, I mean, box after box after box of incredible material. A lot of it in his own pen. I mean, there's notes between him and Langston Hughes. There's there's inventories of cataloging of music. I mean, there's awards. There's everything basically. So I mean, I got these little secret secret files, which I'm not going to
So hold it a little bit closer. What is it?
I mean, for example,
what does it say at the top?
I mean, for example, without breaching any copyright, these are like, I mean, through the graciousness of his estate, which I must add, they let scholars like myself kind of get close to these original manuscripts to look at the way in which he worked. For example, like this is a tune which was unrecorded called "Love's Done Something to Me," and you've got like I've got the whole like, I mean, I've had access to look at the whole from even
the whole
lyrics,
score,
the whole process of him composing.
Right. Okay.
About a lot of this is how broadly he thought. I mean, he wrote a very important piece of music, which is again criminally underrated. Not underrated, excuse me, under acknowledged, called Yamaha, which was a rhapsody he wrote. I mean, it's a. I mean, not many people have, and that's one of the problems I'm trying to redress.
Yeah.
I mean, Yamaha is like his Rhapsody in Blue. His Rhapsody in Blue. I mean, it's a masterwork of American composition that goes right up there with Copeland and Charles Ives and all these people.
So is it orchestrated for like a bigger group?
Man, I mean, he recorded a version of him playing the whole parts solo piano, which is like seminal listening, I think, for anyone interested in those early piano styles. I mean, again, I'm talking about an instrument that's not my own. I mean, this has really touched me, like this music, you know.
Yeah.
But
oh, that's great.
I mean, he wrote this for orchestra. It was never recorded during his lifetime. I mean, I've got ambition to do this whole rhapsody in a trio format, try and take like what he envisaged for a big orchestra and do it with the materials that we have with piano, bass, and drums. Really,
that's super exciting. Super exciting.
Seeing him like the whole process of him like going through this compositional like workshop that he seems to create. I mean, he's so thorough and detailed in how he does things, about how he drafts and how he like orchestrates. I mean, he was always thinking orchestrally, and that's what I love about the approach of all those stride pianists. They're basically playing an orchestra in one instrument. I'm trying to get that one instrument and spread it out amongst three. That's basically my approach in a nutshell. You're
reorchestrating the orchestra.
I'm trying to. maybe you could class that as kind of backtracking a little, but I mean, I'm trying to just do what we can.
I think it's great. So let's jump into some more music from Mark. This is an Ornette Coleman tune called "Ramblin'," and you're listening to Live at 5. And we're back live at 5. And I am just chewing everybody's ear off in the breaks here about this this record that I love, and it has a slightly X-rated cover, so you're gonna love it. It's called Wilbur de Paris and his New Orleans Jazz. That was the name of his band, and it's called That's a Plenty. It's right here, and it sounds a little bit like this. Let's see if I can get one up here. Okay. Kind of sounds like Stranger on the Shore, doesn't it, Marky?
Oh man, of course. Man.
I think Acker was checking out Wilbur de Paris. So
I think he was clearly.
Wilbur de Paris is a really cool musician in the kind of in the history of New Orleans jazz, and kind of, you know, I mean, I don't really like the term Dixieland because it's kind of used after the fact to just describe anything that comes before bebop that's small group jazz. But you know, Wilbur de Paris was an interesting one because he was very ambitious in the way that he arranged a lot of the traditional New Orleans material. So, you know, you listen to that record and the tunes are really good, and the recording sounds really good. It's kind of sounds like, Darcy, you were saying, it sounds like this cavernous space, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It sounds like they had some recording budget, so that's always good. Because we certainly don't. You know?
Right, yeah.
But you know, Wilbur de Paris used to talk about, and he had a brother, Sidney de Paris, who's a great trumpet player as well. We used to talk about the fact that he wasn't playing that music as a kind of, because he was around in the 50s and 60s, and he has some great arrangements of the Pearls, Waiting for the Robert E. Lee, a lot of the classic old New Orleans tunes. But he said, we are not playing historical music. We are playing music now. And my band, that's why he called it his new New Orleans jazz, you know? It was kind of like that 1950s as well, which are kind of like great things, but meat and potatoes, it's like it happens. That's how it happens. Wilbur de Paris was trying to update. So I really like that, especially in reference to what we've been talking about with Mark. So Mark, tell us a little bit about you know, how and if your outlook has changed on playing jazz, you know, being kind of in New York and interacting with different people, because obviously you were on the London scene for, you know, close to 10 years before you moved.
Yeah, I mean, it's just, I don't know if it's about changing location. I mean, it's more about just growing a bit older and kind of moving more and more and more into like a real relationship with the music, really. I mean, I'm more in love with it than I've ever been. Wow. And that just comes from experiences. I mean, like, since being here, I've had a whole load of new experiences about kind of starting from totally fresh again in some ways. And there's a lot of work still to do. But I mean, that's the least of my concerns. My main concern is just being serious about what I'm here to do, which is playing music.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's, you know, speaking of getting older and celebrating age, Mark's dog has turned 5 today.
She's out on a walk. She might make a cameo appearance maybe towards the end of the program.
Where are you gonna take her for dinner? Are you gonna cook something? Get the candles out.
She likes beef jerky, so I'm gonna make beef jerky. It's my birthday on Thursday. I like beef jerky too, so maybe I'll buy.
Well, I hope that she gets you as nice a present as you get her. You know, it's just a reciprocal thing. So, you know, I think that the thing about your move to New York that's so different, you know, is that you knew a lot of people when you moved and you knew where you were going. So I feel like you kind of fell into a track right away of kind of being around the right people, which is, completely to your credit and not luck at all. But I wonder if you've picked anything new up over there that you really feel that you didn't find in London, not necessarily just musically, but even, you know, the pace of life, or just kind of, as someone who's lived in both scenes, can you kind of describe a difference?
People ask me this all the time, like whether when I go back to England or American musicians and friends here, and I can't really say there is much of a difference because everyone still loves the music in the same way. there are great places to play in both. I mean, the obvious thing about New York is that I can go and see a lot of the older great living masters frequently, which is I mean, I could do that in London too. I mean, working at Ronnie Scott's so frequently before I moved over was a really great opportunity in kind of meeting American traveling musicians and getting to hear them and meet them and kind of have a beer with them and just kind of start making a few of those connections before I kind of made the plunge.
Sure,
but a huge part of it, I think, is having some really good people out here who've really had my back through the whole thing, because it's a big thing. I mean, when I left London, I left my now wife and my dog behind. You know, I moved over. I mean, it was a big change leaving like loads of friends. I mean, I made some really great friends through my time in London who I still class as great friends. I mean, luckily I had some people that really fought my corner. I mean, there was like, I mean, I'm forever grateful to someone who I'm sure everyone knows is a great bassist, Alex Claffey, who basically took me under his wing when I first arrived, and he'd give me some of his sub gigs, and I got to meet people through that. Like Johnny O'Neill, I wouldn't have been able to kind of work and travel with him if it wasn't for Alex recommending me. And of course, like friends a bit closer from home. I mean, like Phil Robson and Christine Tobin, to other people who made the move across the pond. I mean, having their friendship and also knowing them from before and their guidance, and that was really invaluable, to be honest. Just those kind of relationships became all the more important because I was in a totally alien situation. Culturally, it's very different too. Trying my best not to get a kind of one of those 1920s transatlantic kind of accents, really. Like, but,
it's the Cary Grant.
Exactly.
Hey, get the Cary Grant. You know, do it. You know, I have a question, and this is kind of a silly idea, but I feel like, and I'm sure that somebody at some point will write a dissertation about this, because it sounds like one of those jazz PhD kinds of dissertations, but I'd actually be really interested in this. Seems to me, and correct me if I'm wrong, that every city that you go to as a jazz musician has its own like 20 tunes that people play at jam sessions. So like when I used to live in Montreal, every session was like, you know, How Deep Is the Ocean? Everybody played that. You know, that was that was in the canon, you know, but I'd lived in Boston. And in Boston, people used to play Sweet and Lovely, you know?
Right.
And it's like, and then you go to London and people
plays Jubilee, man.
Only in my bar. But you know, you get those feelings when you go to different cities, or am I wrong? I mean, you go to sessions,
places, man. I mean, I was just in China. Like, I've been in China a lot the last couple of years. Various things in Jazz at Lincoln Center, Shanghai. They got new Blue Notes in Beijing. I've been doing a lot of traveling, which has been really good fun.
What do they play?
I mean, actually, like they kind of just play tunes. I can't really remember, but just in terms of like broaden it just from tunes. I mean, for example, in New York, people like to play Voyage, Kenny Barrington, which I mean, like,
that kind of stuff.
I still don't know. I'm kind of showing my weak side now, but I mean, that kind of stuff. But I mean, like in China, we went to this jam session, and I because I've been a few times now, I've got some friends there, so we get invited out to the clubs and get to hang out and mix with those musicians. And man, like, I mean, it's incredible. Everywhere seems to have a scene. I mean, it makes you realize how global this music is. Really,
isn't that great? That's a real truth. Okay, so here's a question that we ask everyone who comes on the show, and it's always a fun moment. What's a kind of a moment that you've had, just one, I'm sure you've had many, that's kind of a humbling or a career affirming kind of moment where you thought, yeah, this is why I do this?
I mean, there've been so many times like that. Like every time I look back at like what I've achieved, I get really humbled by the fact that like I'm a kid from Nottingham in the East Midlands, you know, and like kind of like who like has really kind of been able to go to some beautiful places through the love of this music and meet some really great people and perform some special things, really. I mean, a really special one for me was like playing at the Barbican not about a year and a bit ago with Wynton Marsalis, who's been kind of one of my mentors and someone that's really again fought my corner a lot. I met him back in London when I was at the Guildhall School, and he heard me playing, gave me his phone number, and we kind of kept in touch. And to actually kind of go back and play like with one of the people that got me firmly into the music and passionate about the music and serious about the music. I mean, that was a great experience to do it in somewhere like the Barbican, where I knew a lot of my friends were out there in the audience. I mean, actually, the reason I play bass is because of that. My dad used to take the family to these jazz festivals a lot. So we used to go to Marciac Festival, which, if anyone has been to that festival knows about it, has a very, very strong connection with the Marsalis family. Especially Wynton, who's played there every year.
I remember that gig that you did, you know, that the Barbican one, and that was such a, I think for all the people that know you and knew you when you lived in London, it was such a proud moment because it was that homecoming. You know, it was
very nice to hear that.
Yeah, it was really, no, really, man. I mean, it was a special thing. I remember the only reason I didn't make it was because I was out of town, but I just
you were in the States, I think, right?
Yeah, we'd switched places or something, and it was you, Francisco Chinilio, and Dan Nimmer and Wynton, and it was, you know, I just thought that's just.
Oh man, that was Jason actually on drums on that one.
Was it Jason? Okay, right.
Yeah, I played with Francesco and Wynton on different occasions.
Cheltenham was Francesco, wasn't it?
That's correct. Yeah.
So
I mean, we had a ball, man. There, yeah. I was so nervous with that though.
Well, I was gonna say, what was. I mean, what did you play? What was the vibe? You know.
Again, it's like a total openness to music. I mean, we played round in that one. That Coleman song, we played that song. We played some Wynton's music. Nosmo King. I mean, playing Nosmo King on
great tune.
I mean, that was like, damn. He turned around and went, "Do you know it?" And I was like, "Yeah." I was like, "Oh, here we go." But man, the reason I play bass is largely, in fact, so I saw his septet play with the great Reginald Veal, the great Reginald Veal. Yeah. Playing bass at Marciac. I think this is before I even had a double bass, because owing to a lot of other kind people who've always had my back, like a friend who's now in Australia called Mike Gowland, who used to work for Nottingham Music Education Service. He got me my first double bass following this. But seeing Reginald up there at the stadium gig with 5,000 people watching, like one of the greatest examples of small bands ever in the whole lineage.
I mean, it's. Yeah,
I mean, like then to kind of look at there as a kid and then kind of find myself kind of a meter away from the person I was looking up to, kind of dreaming about a few years later, was very humbling. It means a lot to me actually that I've been able to have all of these kind of opportunities, which have all been due to people kind of fighting my corner, really, which I value very strongly.
And no doubt to your skill and great taste in eyewear.
Oh man, it is a new addition.
Love it. Mark, thank you so much, man, for taking the time to
pleasure, man.
to chat and to play. It's just great, man.
Sure, man. Well, I mean, I wish you and the bar and all the guys all the best, and I look forward to seeing you when this is all over.
You bet, man. Cool. Sure. And thanks to you for listening to and watching to Live at 5. We'll be back tomorrow with, I believe, with Ricky Riccardi from the Louis Armstrong Archive. So that'll be a great time. Remember to subscribe to this channel and to check the links in our bio description below for info about our Patreon and about our Kansas Smitty's membership. But that's enough from us. We'll see you tomorrow live at 5. Thanks a lot. Thanks again for listening to Live at 5. Remember to subscribe to our YouTube channel to stay up to date with every episode. You can also click on the link in the description below to sign up to our Patreon and find out where you can sign up for Kansas Smitty's memberships, as well as purchase records and merch. Enjoy your evening, and we'll see you tomorrow, live at 5.